Third Wheel. This is my perspective. In this video, we're going to be covering I'm Third Wheel. I'm Third Wheel. I'm Third Wheel. Hello everybody. I know normally that I've been picking a topic and discussing it. Well, thanks to some things that I've seen on Twitter and some things that have happened last weekend during the making of my last video has made me finally decide to make this video. I've always been a subscriber to Everyone is Equal. However, thanks to a good friend of mine, Submarine Nick, who we've had many long discussions about this, I am an MRA. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be all I talk about on this channel. It is not. There are some men's issues I get behind and that I follow for a lot of personal reasons. I will give you a little history so that you have an idea of where I'm coming from. My mother is a great woman, but would be considered a second-wave feminist. During the 80s, women in the workplace were still not completely treated fairly. I grew up hearing how bad men were from my mother and her friends. I started to hate my gender. I was awkward around girls. I was afraid that I would do something to hurt or offend them. I did not want to be that typical guy, and because of that, I was looked down upon by both genders. It wasn't until my 20s did I become okay with being male. So, as I see these third-wave feminists screaming oppression and how evil men are, I'm reminded of how it was for me as a child, and I do not wish to see a generation suffer as I have. As for this channel, I will still fight ignorance and offer a third perspective on the subjects I cover. I will also do my best to continue to deliver the most accurate and middle ground of any topic. So in this video, I'm going to pull back the media, SJW, feminist smearing on this group. Now, all groups have their trolls and assholes, which paints a poor picture of the group they belong. My goal in this video is 1. Give you scope on the MRAs, 2. Better inform you of this point of view. Now, I found Wikipedia, Men's Rights Movement, which is like the father, if you will, of MRAs. It's the main group, main hub. MRAs are a subsect of that. But I will cover MRM in this video. According to Wikipedia.com, the men's rights movement is a part of a larger men's movement. It branched off from the men's liberation movement in the early 1970s. The men's rights movement is made up of a variety of groups and individuals who focus on numerous social issues, including family law, parenting, reproduction, domestic violence, and government services including education, compulsory military service, social safety nets, and health policies, which men's rights advocates say discriminate against men. Here are some of the issues that they bring awareness of. Wikipedia continues, domestic violence. Men's rights advocates describe domestic violence committed by women against men as a problem that goes ignored and underreported, in part because men are reluctant to describe themselves as victims. Okay, so on a personal note, I was in a verbally abusive relationship, ironically enough, with a feminist, so I'm a little biased on this one. YouTube and Facebook are full of videos and stories of women getting revenge, where these women attack, destroy the property of their former or current man, where people all think it's funny, or they say that guy had it coming, and the woman is hailed as a hero. Think about this. What if a man did any of that to a woman? He'd be strung up in the streets for it, and as he should, by punishment of law. Okay, so the next issue is rape or the false accusations thereof. Men's rights activists are concerned with false accusations of rape and sexual assault, and desire to protect men from the negative consequences of these false accusations. Quoting research including those by Eugene Cannon, which, if I messed up his name, I apologize, and the U.S. Air Force. They assert that 40 to 50% or more of rape allegations might be false. There was a case I saw on Telegraph.com where a young Englishman who was falsely accused of rape by a fellow high school student. This young man was an honor student and was an upright citizen. This poor lad was accused of rape, and several weeks later the so-called victim withdrew the charges before the police could even finish its investigation. By then the damage to this guy was done. The mental strain of such accusations pushed this young man to take his own life. Last weekend I got into a discussion about race on Twitter, but one of the people in the thread had really stood out on this topic. A young lady described herself as a feminist and an anti-racist, while trying to make a point that she had misrepresented what I was saying. I used the word rape as an analogy for her virtue signaling. She retorted to the effect that men cannot be raped. I told her the fact that she believes that men could not be raped and that she did not get my analogy I was trying to make made me weep for this generation. She responded with, and I quote, "Men cannot be raped because they are horny and they just enjoy it. How could you be so dumb?" As a side note, I also found this retweet on her page. She had made an assumption that I probably do not use transgender's proper pronouns, which her idea of a pronoun is Z, Zer, and Zed, which my rebuttal to her was, you're right, I do not. I do not treat people by gender or race. I treat them as people. So here is her retweet on her page to my rebuttal. So getting away from Twitter and moving on, one of the other big topics is male suicide. In the United States, the male-to-female suicide death ratio varies between 3-to-1 to 10-to-1. However, studies have found an overrepresentation of women in attempted or incomplete suicides, and men in complete suicides. This phenomenon, termed the gender paradox of suicide, usually derived from greater tendency of females to use less lethal methods and greater male access and use of lethal methods such as firearms. This is why I'm an MRA. The crazy illiterate feminist on Twitter is not a representation of all feminists. Sadly, I am finding more and more of these type of feminists and SJWs. But we all need to pull together to really look at some of these issues. Men are just as susceptible to suicide as women are, and in some cases more likely to succeed, which just breaks my heart. If people would take the time to really sit and talk with somebody who's on the edge, especially a guy who, as a man myself, it's hard to express yourself sometimes because you're looked down on as weak. And exposing that weakness to somebody and trying to relate to them and really hear them and find out what's dragging them down and help build them back up. You'd be amazed. Sometimes just a simple hug and hearing somebody out, especially a man in crisis, can really change their day. As always, you have the right to disagree with me. I do encourage, however, that you dig a little deeper than media or one source. The overview I used of what the MRM is from Wikipedia. There are plenty of resources out there. I've included a link below from a Time Life story from 2014. Please like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. I will also have my sources in the description below. And I also want to thank my friends, Submarine Nick and Natty Cat, and my girlfriend for all their input. I am Third Will, and this has been My Perspective. I'm Third Will. This my perspective.